Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Game, presented by Tunnel Vision Sports. I'm your host, Stephen Hayes. Today we have former boxer turned promoter, Dmitriy Salita. Dmitry, how you doing today?
Everything's great. Nice to be on with you.
Oh man, appreciate you taking the time out, man. Glad we could make this happen. I was actually excited when you hit me back, so I appreciate it, man. So as I told you,
looking forward to a good conversation.
Absolutely, and I told you, beforehand, we're all about positivity, and I feel you have a very positive message. The way your boxing career went, a lot of people might not know that you started off as a fighter, turned promoter, and you've seen success in both avenues. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been around the boxing game since you were about 13, correct?
Yeah.
So how did that start for you? What was that inspiration for you to get in the ring?
So my family immigrated here from the Soviet Union. I was 9 years old. Immigrated to Brooklyn, New York. Went through a difficult immigration experience. My family was on welfare and food stamps. 5 of us lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. Somehow I had a certain like for combat sports. So initially I did karate and then transferred into boxing. I started boxing at the Star City Boxing Club in Brooklyn, New York, which at that time had some of the best fighters in the country and the world, from the amateurs to the pros. I grew up with Louis Collazo, Monty Barrett, Shannon Briggs, Danny Jacobs, Zab Judah, Travis Sims, Curtis Stevens, the list, Saddam Ali, the list goes on and on and on. And it was a very intense, talent-packed environment. Andrew Rozier, Norma Lorick, Felipe Gomez are guys that are part of the boxing business as trainers, matchmakers on a fairly high level now, but we all came up together in that basement of Star City Boxing Club. So, being in that environment, I loved boxing really from the very first day at the gym. I wanted to be the best I could be in a ring. And then as I understood that my professional career was going to wind down, I wanted to be involved in the sport. And initially I promoted some of my own fights, but then I saw business in it, and my love for the sport is really deep, and it transferred into the promotional business. And I'm very blessed to wake up every day and do what I love, even though there are lots of challenging days and it could be difficult. But when you really have a passion and a love for something, those difficult times are manageable. And so it's been going great, and we're still growing, still in a growing curve, and doing our best to promote the fighters and make sure that they reach a little bit beyond their potential. That's the goal.
And that is awesome. And before we even get into some of the notable names that Salita Promotions has, talk about that transition. Did you find it difficult to turn on the promoter side, being a fighter for so long, and having that edge and that competitiveness? Did you find it difficult to kind of step away from the boxing side of it, from the combat side of it, and then transition to the business side?
It was a gradual process. So certainly, when I started representing really good fighters, and some of the promoters, the business folks that have been around the business for a long time, that have not had the experience of being in a ring as I have, and don't really have a true connection to the sport, other than the fact that they're in the business of it and may like it. But the business of it is a bit of a different dynamic, so some of these guys were world champions and pound for pound fighters in the area of business and boxing business, and I was representing some really good fighters. And some of the people that have been around it were surprised that I was able to represent them. So initially there was some difficulties in making sure that the contracts are enforced and the fighters stay with me. But it was very good. It was very good. At the time it was very challenging, but now looking back at it, I think that it taught me a lot, and was tremendous for my growth. As far as transferring from being a fighter to being a promoter, I think towards the end of my professional career, and throughout my career, I really saw some challenging moments in the business of boxing. I think Emmanuel Stewart kind of talked about it as well, from his point of view back when he was fighting, and I felt that there had to be another way, and I didn't want to. And then as a fighter, as my career progressed, I didn't want to put myself in certain positions that I didn't really feel comfortable in. So initially, I started to promote my own fights, and the first fighter that I signed was Jarrell Miller, who became the #1 American heavyweight, the #1 heavyweight in the world. I had a chance to fight Anthony Joshua for the undisputed heavyweight world title. Still believe he'll be back, but he's one of the biggest names in the heavyweight division. And he was only 1-0 when he fought on my show. And Jarrell was in camp with me when I was still fighting, but I've never seen him fight as a pro. I was like, man, this guy got all the tools. He got the personality. He got the skills. And I was so surprised that other big promoters in town, New York City is not one of the Midwest states where boxing doesn't live. Boxing lives in New York. And I was so surprised that with Jarrell's, all of his gifts inside and outside the ring, that no promoter was, had him. So initially, I actually tried to introduce him to different big promoters in town, but it was a difficult process, and I put him on my events, and then I signed him, and was very honored and happy to be able to see that we were able to do the work from fighting in the club shows to being able to fight in Madison Square Garden. It's a big, for the first fight that I promoted, that was a big jump, and something that I feel very, very proud of. So yeah, and you keep rolling different in any business through different stages. The more you're in it, you have different challenges and different challenges of growth. And so because I love the sport of boxing, I enjoy, learning new things inside and at this point outside the ring.
And you mentioned Jarrell Miller, and obviously, yes, he is definitely one of the biggest names in the heavyweight division. Some more notable names that you have: Christina Lady Hammer in the women's division, and then of course the GOAT Claressa Shields. And now for you, I just want to commend you. I think you're doing a tremendous job with the way that you move your fighters along and the way that you progress. As a promoter, now that you're on that side of it, so you take someone like Claressa, who has all the skills and all the talent in the world, and she wants to switch over to that MMA side. Is there any thought process to that for you on your end? Like, do you worry about that at all? Switching from boxing to MMA?
So I I first heard about Claressa reading the Wall Street Journal before 2016 Olympics.
Okay.
And there was a small story about Claressa. Talked about the fact that she won an Olympic gold medal in 2012. It was the year that Hillary was running for president. And, Claressa being from Flint, Michigan, incredible amateur career, all the things that she's accomplished inside the ring, personal life, I was like, man, this is like, coming out of the Olympics, this is like the hottest fighter there is. There's no man or woman in the Olympics that is as hot as Claressa Shields. And I initially tried to reach out to different people. I actually spoke to TV networks without ever meeting Claressa. I spoke to TV networks about putting Claressa on before I even met her, before I even knew that I would be able to work with her.
Wow.
And yeah, it's pretty, looking back at it, it's pretty cool. And then I found a way to connect with her. And our first fight, she was the main event on Showtime at MGM Grand Detroit. First time in the history of the sport that a woman was a main event on a premium cable network television. And first time that boxing happened at MGM Detroit. It was a main event. It was sold out. First time a woman did anything like that. It got tremendous ratings, and it was phenomenal. And after that, Claressa and I sat down and worked out a deal, and I've been working with her as her promoter ever since. And so Claressa, from the very beginning of her career, she said, "Dmitry, make the biggest and the best fights for me." And it's been challenging because the other girls don't always want to fight Claressa.
Absolutely.
And we have to do what we have to do, overpay them, and then make sure that Claressa has a chance to perform and to make history, or rather her story, every time she steps in the ring. And the last time that she was in a boxing ring was March 5th. It was still during Corona. We did an event in Flint, Michigan. All the TV networks that are traditionally in boxing didn't have the budget, didn't have the time to put her on. So we felt that it was important for Claressa to keep building her story, to keep building her dream, and we thought it was important to do our own event because there was no other option, and we did an event at the Door Center in Flint, Michigan, with limited fans. Everybody had to get tested. No one failed the COVID test prior to the fight, and she fought for the undisputed junior middle world title, and with winning that title, she became a 2-division undisputed champion, the only man or woman in a 4-belt era, like being the only 2-time Olympic gold medalist. So Clarissa has really been incredible with making significant strides every time she steps in the ring, not only for boxing, but I feel for women's sports all over the world. And we made sure to, like, the last fight card was an all women's show, and we always make sure to include a women's bout on the card, because Clarissa is not only doing this for herself, she's doing it for the sport of boxing. And Clarissa finding in MMA and doing what she's doing, it's bigger than, she understands that she is on a mission that's kind of bigger than her, but she is the vehicle to make things happen. And her being in MMA, fighting on ESPN, getting the publicity that she's getting, taking the MMA fans, telling them her story, expose them to boxing. That's really a tremendous thing. And I think that it just furthers her brand and furthers her story. And we're working on a lot of exciting things outside of boxing for her. And she's going to be fighting again as an ESPN in MMA bout on August 19th. And in the fall, we'll be announcing her next boxing fight.
And I can't wait to see that. That should be very exciting. And I just want to, commend you for the way you have handled Clarissa's career. And she's definitely the GOAT. And everything that you guys are doing is good for the sport. And it's good notoriety for the women's side of the sport, but just in general, it's good for the sport. And we need more stuff like that. Now, Dmitry, on your side, as far as, now that you've fought, you've had success in the boxing ring, you're having success outside of the ring. In your personal, I'm not trying to dive in too deep, but where does that motivation come from for you? Where does that, I know you talked about your background a little bit earlier, but was there one person or, somebody that inspired you and that continues to inspire you today?
Well, the person that inspired me, that gave me the support that I needed when I first moved to this country, just joined the Star City Boxing Club, was Jimmy O'Farrell, who was the director of the boxing club. Took me under his wing and showed me many of the ways of the world, taught me a lot of things inside of boxing and outside of boxing, showed me life and certain things and situations that someone from my community, from where I come from, wouldn't have a chance to see. But I was Jimmy's family, and very blessed to have experienced some of them things, and seen things that I've seen as a teenager, as a kid, as a teenager, as a young adult, continuously, and I'm very grateful for that. So Jimmy truly inspired me, and whatever it is that you do, and I think boxing is an art, and any sport is an art. So whatever it is that you do, you gotta want to be the best for the people that work for you, for the fighters that you represent. Otherwise, there's no point. If you can live with not being the best, with not being, doesn't mean that there isn't room for anybody else. There should be other people that could be the best. Like in boxing, people say, well, who's the number one promoter? There's always like 3 number one promoters. There's always several people that are number one, which doesn't take away anything from them. So my drive and when I wake up in the morning, when I plan, is to be the best, is to be the best possible place where a fighter can have all his or her needs met, where my people that work for me feel fulfilled and feel that they're doing something great, and that the boxing fans watch great fights and get something out of an event that they wouldn't get, and feel special about taking part in it. And it's a growing process, and I know that I'm a big believer in small habits, because small habits are tiny links that link things together and influence big change, and so my drive is to be the best, but to be the best not in a way that excludes other people or that makes them, that like, well, like I beat you, so you're number 2 and I'm number 1. No, you could also be number 1. I'm not trying to, because in a boxing business, a lot of time people hear different things about different, so there's, one of the great reputations that one of the big things for my success and reputation that we've had in the sport is that we can work with everyone. And I think it's very important to make the biggest and the best fights, because that's important for the fighters, it's important for the fans, and it's really about the fans. But also the fighters get the opportunities when they're able to fight other great fighters, and boxing fans can receive the reward of why they follow the sport of boxing.
And I think that is the main key there. The fact that you can be the best and someone else can be the best. Like, you know what I mean? Having that mentality alone is a recipe for success, to be able to understand that there is room for everyone. But I guess you could say you're just going to stay in your lane and you're just going to do it the way you're going to do it. But and you've had tremendous success since you've stepped onto the promoter side. And the fact that you said we can work with anyone, that is huge. I'm not too knowledgeable about that backside of the business, but I do know that a lot of times you hear fighters say, or the talks of a big fight broke down because the promoters couldn't work together or something of that nature. So I once again commend you for that.
Thanks.
And I just have to, you coming, from where you come from and that gym and that background, I just have to ask you, do you have it could be out of New York or it can be wherever, but do you have a top 5 fighters of all time?
Top 5 fighters of all time? You mean like, from the gym or from the ring?
Or it can be whichever. Is it from the gym or just period, in the ring, period?
One of the things, well, I don't know if I want to make a list, but one of the things that I'll say is there's a handful of very talented fighters that are like extremely talented and extremely good, and and they may not have the best records, and something happens to them when they get into the real fight. There's, I don't know whether it's pressure of the crowd or television or whatever, and they just kind of tense up. But in the gym, man, they put it on world champions like nobody's business. I mean, they could really, really fight. And I've seen that. And guys that are like pro records that are like 5-5, but in the gym, man, they're like incredible. So I've seen that. But growing up in Starrett City Boxing Club, and then later, many years later, training at the Crown Boxing Gym, one of the things that I would say that is very similar, and I think one of the reasons why both places produce so many great fighters and so many champions, is because of tough sparring, tough boxing, like really, really tough boxing. The sparring is harder than the fights, and obviously there's no weight classes. And in the Starrett City Boxing Club, we had no AC and we had no air conditioning. So in the summertime, it was especially hot because it was in a basement. It was in a garage, or it was in a basement of a garage, and there was no running water, there was no bathroom. It was really, really hot, and only the strong survive. And so, places like this cannot exist anymore in New York City because of all the regulations. Right. But boxing is, I think boxing is a great sport for exercise. It's fantastic, and I think everyone should do it, men, women, kids. To fight is really, really tough. I think only if you really want it, and if you're really good, should you take that path of life, because it's a very difficult and tough journey. And sometimes, people go both ways. They're like, man, it's so unsafe, and there's no this and there's no that. That's true, but it may save a lot of people from further, like, if they could take it and they can enjoy it and they can come back the next day and go through that difficulty and find meaning in it, then they're meant to box. And if they don't, then they're blessed to find another way to make a living and understand early enough that it's not for them. So
now,
yeah.
Go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. So same thing at the Crown Gym in Detroit. I mean, they sometimes turn the heat on in the summertime. It was like if you walk from the door to the changing room, you lost 3 pounds. Like, and I'm not even joking, And then once you start, when you get up in the ring, because it's a little bit higher, it gets even hotter. So it's very, very challenging, and separates, separates the different desires of men that want to box, and men and women that want to box and that don't want to box.
And I think you said something that was key as far as boxing. I agree. Great exercise is something that men, women, children. It would definitely be great for exercise. But there's a different side of that, man. You have to be a different breed to be able to step into that ring and say, I want to do this as a career.
Yeah.
So big respect to you and every other fighter out there. A lot of people sit outside the ring and they might watch it on TV and they might say this or that about a fighter, but you don't understand how difficult it really is until you're in there.
Yeah, even fighters that don't have good records, and
Right.
maybe even upside down records, but you got to respect, because getting in the ring is very tough, and getting punched in the face and the body is really tough and very challenging. So a lot of respect for those men and women that choose to put themselves through that challenge.
And like you said, that is the main thing. You have to go in there, you're getting hit. Yeah, so you have people who, and it's okay because it's not your profession. You have people who've never been hit in their lives versus turning something into a career where you're going out every, however many times you fight, but that's your career path, and you're subject to get hit. So, respect to you and every other fighter out there, man. It's a tremendous thing. I wanted to ask you, if you could leave any words of encouragement to the younger generation who might see this, or anybody aspiring to be anything in their lives, what words of encouragement would you be able to leave today?
I think that it's important to dream big, to have a dream of where you want to get to, and then realize that every day you have to take steps towards that reality. And sometimes you take one step forward and 3 steps back. Sometimes, but I believe that there has to be some type of a habit that holds it all together. It has to be a small habit, but it keeps your mind on it. So, if you want to be a boxer and you can't make it to the gym, maybe your habit is something very small. I'll shadow box in my house for 1 minute, because that keeps your mind in it. That keeps you in that. If you want to be a mathematician, you say, okay, you know what? I can't open the book today because something happened in my house, whatever. I'll just do one equation, 2 + 2, whatever it is. But small habits, I think, are very important to, and it's important to be positive, not to be judgmental on yourself. And I know when I was young, some of these tools you learn only when you get older. But when I was young, when I didn't accomplish something, when I didn't do good in the gym, I'd be very hard on myself. And I think that it's good to be constructive, but you should have a goal of positivity and encouragement, and making sure that you put the work to be able to encourage yourself and to be positive from it. Also, I feel like, but at the same time, like, nothing happens without work, and you got to put in the work, and you gotta show up every day, or most days, and when you do show up, you got to make it count.
Dmitry, I thank you for those words of encouragement, man. I'm sorry, were you going? It was a delay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yes. So, like, I look at it now, but I was an immigrant. I was in a gym with a lot of kids that turned out to be, elite fighters. We all came from different challenging backgrounds. I didn't speak no English. My parents didn't have no money. Fighters from Brownsville, from East New York, that were in the same gym, from different communities, also didn't have no money, and we all used boxing as a springboard to get ourselves out of our situations, And like, when you're a kid and you're hitting the bag and you're like, man, I'm gonna be champion of the world. I'm gonna fight in Madison Square Garden. Maybe sometimes, sometimes your peers may make fun of you, or people may not believe you. But if you put in the work, and if you believe in yourself, and if you keep on keeping on, I believe that, and believe in God and believe in yourself, I believe that good things will happen. So it may not be easy, but as long as you keep on putting one foot in front of the other, I think good things will happen. So that's that's with that.
Well, I want to thank you for those words of encouragement, man. And I always ask, our guests that because you never know what can lift somebody up that day.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
when we put this out and whoever is watching this, you never know. And I always want the guests to leave a word of encouragement because, positivity is what we're all about. And it takes one time for that person to hear you or whoever else has said any positive words of encouragement just to lift
You know
that
what?
spirit up.
You bring up a very good point. 'Cause sometimes I just use this as an example. You go to the gym, and you've had a bad day, family, whatever, maybe school, maybe it's five different things that challenge you that day, and you see somebody else struggling, and sometimes when you offer them, you know, give them something positive, encourage them, it also encourages you, and I think that we feed off one another from the positive energy that we create. So I know that when I had those challenge days, I'm very blessed that I had Jimmy O in my life that gave me, at times gave me constructive criticism and also gave me encouragement. But it's very important, if we can, to find a mature mentor that truly wants the best for us, and that's older and that's experienced, and that can guide guide us in the right direction. Because sometimes even when we're grown, you go through certain situations and you may get confused and you may not see straight, because seeing oneself sometimes is not, it's difficult. And if you have a true friend and you have somebody that cares for you and that you trust, it's always sometimes good to bounce off those ideas or your challenges through that person.
I agree with that 100%. Everybody needs, like you said, that person, preferably if they can be older, somebody who has experienced some things in life and somebody who has faced some challenges that you may be facing now, and they're older and they've seen these things. So I know I have that person in my life, and obviously you've had that person in your life. So that is one of the main things that we want to do, is we want to continue positivity, and like I told you before, that was why I reached out to you, because I think your message, I think what you guys are doing in the sport is tremendous, and we wanted to help spread that message.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Great to be on your program, and hopefully we'll stay in touch, and we'll have more positive and good news to spread both ways.
Absolutely. One of the top boxing promoters in the sport, Dmitry Salita, man, beyond the game.
Talk to him, baby. Tell him.
We're out.
Thanks, man.